Hello, everyone. As David said, my name is Aaron Clark, and I'm a senior psychology major, and I'm a member of Cohort 13 of the Entrepreneurship for the Public Good program. I'd like to thank you again for being here. You've been thanked aplenty, but one appreciates being appreciated. So this summer I interned with the City of Berea Department of Parks and Recreation as the race director and organizer of the Daniel Boone Splash and Dash. Many of you here were in my cohort of EPG, so you know about it, but for those of you who don't, the Splash and Dash is a USA Triathlon sanctioned youth multi-sport event. It's a whole lot of words to describe a swim run for children ages 6 to 15. And this summer, Ben Kreisen, who is over there digging into his plate of food, he and I worked to reorganize the event, to reproduce the event we had last summer. Well, the summer before last, I guess, and to actually improve on it. One of our goals was to crystallize the model well enough for the City of Berea to take the event on as sort of a signature city event that will happen every year. And I really hope they do that. I'll be pitching it to them again later this semester, hopefully, so wish me luck. Okay, so before I get into the details about my internship, I'd like to tell you how I got there, because it's kind of a funny story. It was an unorthodox pathway. So when it came to finding an internship, I knew that I wanted to do something involving research. I'm a psychology major, and getting that under your belt is a really good thing to do if you want to go to graduate school, which I do. And so I actually applied to several places, several universities and research centers, and I actually was selected as a research assistant at an organization called Appalachian Voices. I don't know if you've heard about it. If you take a lot of classes in this building, like with Silas House or something, then you'll have heard about it. It's an advocacy group that deals mainly with environmental issues that affect, the Appalachian region, people in the Appalachian region. And the specific project I was selected to work as a research assistant for involved the effects of coal mining, strip mining, extractive industry on the people who lived specifically in Southwest Virginia. So I was stoked. I had this. I was settled in. I had made my travel arrangements to go to Virginia. And then I recall, I was at work. I'm a TA, so I was at work. And I opened up my email, because that's what TAs do at work. And it informed me that they were building a new pipeline, an oil pipeline that was going to go through Virginia. And they were completely diverting all of the research people, because they're actually quite a small organization in terms of bandwidth and manpower. They were diverting all of their focus to this pipeline, and what it came down to is they had to rescind the offer, which that was about less than a month before summer. So, so I panicked a bit. I'm not going to lie to you, I panicked. But I did what any sort of reasonable person would do, and I immediately contacted Dr. Hackbert because, when in doubt. And thanks to his help and the help of the Office of Internships, I was able to turn my misfortune into a really awesome, singular opportunity, allowing me to be the race director for the Daniel Boone Splash and Dash. So I'd like to tell you about my internship, and sort of to preface this, I'd like to tell you about my involvement with the Splash and Dash, because this wasn't my first rodeo, thankfully. The inaugural Splash and Dash was the primary project of my cohort of Entrepreneurship for the Public Good program. So we organized it. We worked really hard to do that. We raised funds from local businesses. We did like a phone-a-thon, which I really enjoyed. We provided scholarships for all of the kids who were involved in the event, so they didn't have to pay anything to participate. We put door hangers. This was the less fun part. We put door hangers on every door in the city of Berea in a matter of weeks, which was an arduous task, but we did that to promote the event, so it was worth it. And in order to prepare for sort of the roles we will be playing at the actual event, at our event, we volunteered at the Kids Legacy Triathlon. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's been around for about 6 years now. In Lexington, Kentucky. If you watch WKYT News, Sam Dick, the anchorman, he's the race director for that event. Really awesome guy, really high-performing individual, as Dr. Hackbert would say. And so this past summer, I was interning with the Department of Parks and Recreation. So we organized it this way so that we could sort of work on handing the event off to the city. This needed to become a city event. It's been successful for the past 2 summers. It's an event I care a lot about. And so we were under sort of the aegis of Priscilla Bloom. She's the director of Parks and Recreation for Berea, Kentucky. And Ben and I want to extend a thanks to you right in the middle of this because you helped me a lot. Ben's a pretty valuable guy. But it was just me and Ben, pretty much, with, of course, the advisement of Dr. Hackbert and of Priscilla and of a whole lot of other resources. But our staff was severely reduced. We didn't have an army of EPGers to hang up door hangers and stuff, so we had to be really smart about how we marketed the event and how we sort of organized things. And one thing we did is we developed relationships to do this. So we worked with the local school boards, local schools, who were kind enough to allow us to access their websites and their social media accounts to promote the event. We sent out news releases. Ben wrote most of them and sent them out to newspapers all throughout central Kentucky. A lot of phone calls, a lot of working with these people to get our stuff published, because I don't know if any of you ever tried to publish anything in a newspaper. It's not that simple if you don't want to pay them, which of course we didn't. And so last summer we had about 40 participants, and then this summer we replicated that with about 40 participants again on a course that I personally worked with the engineer on the grounds of the local pool to design. And really quickly, I'd like to touch on some sort of skills and abilities that I developed in Marshall throughout my internship experience. So I learned how to draw on different sources of knowledge, which I feel is really important, because at college you can kind of lose sight of that. When you write a paper, you're asked to cite references, to read articles, and that's all well and good. I had a sort of technical article type thing that helped me to organize the event. It's called a manual. The USAT official manual for the Splash and Dash is super helpful, and it provides a really firm basis for moving ahead, but that's not the only thing I relied on. An equally important source of knowledge for me was Sam Dick, who I mentioned before. Ben and I enjoyed the super awesome opportunity to shadow him on the day of his event. We were there before dawn. We were there way before the sun was up, and we did everything. We put up equipment, we laid down tape, we went to every aspect, to every place in the course. We followed Sam Dick. We learned how he runs a ship, and he runs a tight ship. And so I really used him as sort of an archetype for how I wanted to pull the Splash and Dash off. And if he were here, I'd thank him, shake his hand. Wonderful guy. And I love his event. And so we love to talk about dealing with ambiguity in EPG. But you can't just leave it at that. You have to, how do you deal with ambiguity? And I think the best way to do that is to find out where the knowledge is. And once you find out where the knowledge is, you can figure out what you can know, what you don't know, and then how to build on that knowledge to know more, which is extremely important for reducing ambiguity. I also learned how to work backwards, which is a sort of strategy that Dr. Hackbert showed me and that I plan on incorporating throughout my life. When you have a deadline or a project that you're doing, we have a tendency to say, this is my goal, I'm going to do this to get there, and then I'm going to move on to this, and then I'm going to move on to a third thing. And then you wind up overshooting the deadline, you get crunched. Oftentimes you just give up altogether, which is, I don't recommend that. It's better to work backwards, and this is especially important when you have an event like the Splash and Dash. You know when the event's got to be. So from there, you pretty much have to say, well, if the event is here, then I need to have this done by this time, this done by this time. I need to get these news releases out. We need to have participants by then, by this point. We have orientations for the parents and their kids at these points. And that really helps you to get out in front of things so that you don't wind up missing something important, because this is something I didn't want to screw up, because if I did, if I fell on my face, it wasn't going to be EPG that looked bad. It wasn't going to be the city of Berea that looked bad. People would point at me, and kind of at Ben, but mostly at me. And I wasn't about to let that happen, and so working backwards really helped me to avoid that. And in conjunction with working backwards, I also got to rely on my prior involvement with the program. That's why I think that it was such a success this summer, is because I knew what I was going into, at least a little bit. The event from 2016, the 2016 event, the inaugural Splash and Dash, was a great event, and since then it's been a really awesome model for developing the event, reproducing it, and also for improving it. And so this goes along with working backwards. I was able to say, well, at this point last summer, we were here. and now we're here, and I got to compare those two things and then sort of find out how to modify or adjust my behavior. You know, it was feedback basically, sort of retroactive feedback. And a good example of this is, you know, I had to keep up with registrations. Very important thing. You have an event, you have to have people in the event. Otherwise, it's not really an event. And what I did is I noticed that registrations were lagging quite a bit, fairly late in the game. And so I thought, how do I remedy this problem? And the solution I came up with is that I worked with Priscilla Bloom, the director of Parks and Rec, to develop an incentive program to encourage registrations at the local pool. Basically, if you register your kid at the pool, then you get a voucher for your family to enter the pool for free on any day you wanted. One of the sort of selling points for the previous event was that if you participated, you got to swim free for the rest of the day. No one wants to swim free for the rest of the day after they've already participated in a duathlon, in a splash and dash. You know, they're tired. And so I felt that this sort of ticket program would encourage registrations, and it totally did. Registrations skyrocketed after that. And so these sort of two things in conjunction work toward, you know, they represent the EPG ability of marshaling resources, which I learned how to do really well. You know, human resources, my volunteers, who I can't thank enough, my sponsors, who were really awesome. And that's definitely something that's extremely important for anyone who's going to be doing anything professional in the near future, hopefully all of us. And finally, I learned how to encourage change in my community. The event from 2016 was, again, a really awesome success, but something that was a sticking point for us that we were sort of, I don't think I'm going too far in saying we were disappointed, is that most of our participants came from out of town. Over 2/3 came from outside of Berea. The Splash and Dash is intended to be a social intervention with intentions of promoting healthful living for young people in Berea and Madison County. And so it's great that people came from out of town, but that was sort of missing the mark, honestly. And so this summer, Ben and I worked hard to change that a little bit, to flip the ratios. And we did this by targeting our marketing accordingly. So we visited the local pool, of course, and registered people. We visited swim meets, sports conferences, local schools, everything local. And I'm pretty proud to say that this summer, 40 participants like last summer, but this time we flipped the ratios. 2/3 were from Berea, resided in Berea proper, and then over 2/3 were from Madison County. And I really hope that these abilities I'll be able to carry with me into the future, and I'm pretty sure they'll carry me some places. What do I intend to do after I graduate? I'm graduating in May. What do I intend to do? I've got a few options. Of course, I'm considering graduate school. That's always been the plan. So I'll be taking the GRE in a couple weeks, and so wish me luck. But then I'm also working on a scholarship application to study in Cambridge for 2 years after I graduate. And I'm working hard for that. I've been staying up nights, getting my essays ready, and so wish me even more luck on that one. And in closing, I'd like to share with you sort of the final overarching theme lesson from my summer, because I like to see big pictures and themes. And it's kind of appropriate that I'm going to couch this in psychological terms. So you're all familiar with biases, correct? You've been at college long enough. So as a student of psychology, I love to study biases, cognitive biases. I could probably rattle off about 20 right now if pressed, but we haven't the time for that. But I'd like to introduce to you a bias that maybe you haven't considered, and it's not really scientific. I just kind of made this up. But it's something that I felt myself acknowledging over the summer. I call it comfort bias. So surprise, surprise, we all love to be comfortable. That's not necessarily a good thing, though, because if you think about it, when you're in your comfortable spaces, you know, with your friends, in doing the things that you like to do, you're really not being yourself that much, because you don't have to be. You know, you have sort of these indicators that you've self-selected that tell you who you are, and they're pretty much plastered on the wall of your comfortable spaces. And so you don't really have to be you that much. You don't have to really stand up for your values. But I find that when you're in uncomfortable spaces, so when you're in those scary places and you don't have those things on the wall, then you have to kind of reify these things internally. And I think that's when your character really comes out. I know it did for me. I'm pretty sure it did for Ben. I know he was uncomfortable. He was also very sleepy. And so when you get that little talk when you come into Berea about stepping outside of these comfortable spaces, take it seriously. make that part of your personal philosophy and just go out and be yourself wherever you are. Any questions?